Hello and welcome to the European Report. Here we are once again in the European Parliament, which is in the heart of the European Union. And in today's programme, we'll be discussing the dangers of the BDS and how they are doing nothing to help bring about a peaceful situation in the Middle East regarding Israel and the Palestinians. And in today's programme, I'm joined by Tomas Sandell, founder and director of the European Union, Bas Belder, MEP for Europe and Freedom and Democracy Group, also representing the Netherlands. And we have Sharon Rappaport, who's a spokesperson for the Israeli mission to the EU. So welcome to the programme. Tomas, I'll start with you because I know that you've just flown back from New York. And you're at the UN, so you had a Seder meal, which is a Passover meal. Can you describe this very important event that you had in the UN?
Well, thank you, Simon. It's good to be back on the show, although I just landed. But I'm very excited. And as you mentioned, something historic happened at the United Nations on Monday. For the first time ever, there was a Passover Seder inside the UN headquarters in New York. And I think for you, Sharon, and all Israelis, it must have been a wonderful sight to see Israel in the middle, the Israeli flag in the middle, and a table of 40 places. We had some 30 plus UN ambassadors, all the major countries, you know, the US, Russia, France, so on and so forth. And really people coming to learn from the story of Haggadah, the story of Exodus. And what a powerful moment it was when people were reading, you know, from the Haggadah, the different ambassadors could read different chapters, and really to be reminded of you know, the significance and the relevance of Exodus still today for us as individuals and for Israel and for the nations. So Simon, it was an amazing event, and we believe we were writing history at the UN on Monday. So I'm very excited and happy to be back.
Fantastic. And Bas, you are such a strong supporter of Israel here in the European Parliament and also in your home country, the Netherlands. Can you share with us why you're so passionate about Israel and why it's so important to stand up for Israel here in the European Parliament?
Firstly, thank you, Simon, to be here in the program. I must say that no day passes without my thoughts on, of course, my Christian community, but also on the state of Israel, on the Jewish community in the Netherlands. Every day passes that I'm phoning to friends and to scholars in Israel and politicians, friends, and also the Jewish community, because the security of the Jewish state, I want to underline the Jewish state, is so precious for me. My Christian background, of course, it is for me the second homeland. I feel it is, but as an historian, I always enjoy the context with great scholars. That gives me a lot of reflection on the political situation in the Middle East and also what is happening to Europe at the moment with our security concerns. So I think especially this time we in the European institutions should be very concerned and very acute on having extremely good relations with Israel, for that is the only place of stability. It is the only place where the values that we esteem so much, that we have such a close connection between the Jewish communities in Europe and the state of Israel. So even if you are not a Christian and you be a rational man, you should appreciate very much this precious relationship. But for me, the deeper dimension, of course, that is the Bible, the biblical connection, the roots that we have in common.
Yeah, and Sharon, it's a real pleasure to have you join us on the European Report today. Can you share with us what your role and responsibility is as being the spokesperson or spokeswoman for the Israeli mission to the European Union?
Thank you, Simon. Very happy to be here today. As an Israeli diplomat, and beyond that, as a person who strongly believes in the European-Israeli connection, I have a very simple message to my counterparts, and that is that Israel and Europe is a family. We are one family. We have a common history, and we will have a common future. And I think it's all of us, it's our job to strengthen, widen, deepen, maximize the potential of this relationship. And this is something I always tell to my whoever I meet. Other than that, I also faced the challenge of explaining the grave reality that Israelis face on the ground on their everyday life. And these, I'm talking about civilians, and it's very important for me to emphasize civilians, because for the past 7 months we've seen stabbing, shooting, car ramming of Israelis all across Israel. There have been up to today 248 terrorist attacks in Israel, and only a few days ago we have noticed that a bus exploded at the heart of Jerusalem, injuring 21 people. And this is where I say to my European colleagues, you should condemn, you should raise loud and clear your message that terror is terror, and terror has no justification.
Yeah. And of course,
thank you.
Of course, we had the horrendous terrorist attacks here in Brussels only back on the 22nd of March. So now the people of Belgium and the people of this city knows what it's like to face a deadly terror attack, and something that Israel has faced for decades now. And we'll be discussing the BDS, the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions movement. Maybe, Thomas, you can explain to us what this movement is and why it's so negative towards Israel.
Well, BDS can be explained in different ways, but I think one way of explaining it simply is to say that these are groups, NGOs, that want to isolate Israel, that want to hurt Israel, that want to demonize the Jewish state by implying tactics that were similar to the apartheid regime in South Africa, and making this comparison which has no justification at all. And I think it's very dangerous, because often, and I don't want to underestimate at all, and of course the terrorist threat, military threat to Israel are real, but there's something which can come across as legitimate and sophisticated and almost like humanitarian, that people say, well, you know, look what is happening in Israel, we have to do something. And when you use a language which come across as liberal, people have a higher acceptance of just, you know, buying that package, and that is why it is so dangerous. I call it a diplomatic war, and I wrote an opinion editorial once where I said that you know, if Israel would lose this battle, I think it will not be lost on a military field. It could be lost in the diplomatic forums, and this is why we need, as individuals in Europe, to learn the argument, to learn how to battle this new form of disease, which is actually just another form of anti-Semitism. But it comes across almost as innocent, and that's why we need to expose it for what it is, you know, violent anti-Semitism.
Yeah. And Bas, maybe you can explain to us the problems within the Netherlands to inform our viewers of the situation regarding the BDS, because, you know, it seems like the BDS is singling out Israel, but really doing nothing to see what's happening in the wider Middle East. And certainly if we have a look at the kind of persecutions of Palestinians, they've been ethnically cleansed in Iraq by groups like ISIS and others. They are, you know, living in horrendous refugee camps in Syria and across the Middle East, but no one's talking about the plight of how the other Arab nations are actually treating the Palestinians, and Israel singled out. So what's the situation regarding the BDS in the Netherlands?
What I've learned in the last days for an update for our program is that they're very active, but on the one hand we should not aggrandize them, on the other hand we should not neglect them, underestimate them. What they are doing is try to terrify customers to buy Israeli products. They have clauses of inspectors go to great shops and then so-called makes inspections of Israeli products to terrify customers not to buy Israeli products. Outside, of course, they demonstrate, and I know there is a council that observes this BDS movement in the Netherlands very closely. And I just spoke this morning, they have at the moment, no political connection, and that should be done. For then we can see these small groups, where is the money, where is their financing? Where are their financial channels? Do they receive subsidies from the government of the Netherlands, of even the European Union? And that we should have our fingers behind, and that's very important. Also to look what kind of persons are they that are so very involved in BDS. For we have seen lately in the United States that such persons are even affiliated and financing Hamas. Terrorist groups. So what they are doing is quite evil to the Jewish people, evil to the Jewish state. It is totally black, white. The idea of the Middle East, and what is also important that should underline that they are also hurting the Palestinian people. Absolutely. That is nothing good for them, totally not. But and I must say, also in the media, just this week, 2 pages in an important newspaper, liberal, but always bashing Israel and trying to back this BDS movement. And so, in short, we are aware of the danger. We don't underestimate the danger. We don't want to make it bigger, but we will combat it and fiercely. For it is now the time.
And Sharon, can you maybe describe and expose the lies and the propaganda regarding the BDS and their claims against Israel, that they claim that they are speaking up on behalf of the Palestinian people and that they are fighting the so-called occupation and oppression by Israel? To be honest, it's one of their own making. But can you describe to us and break down some of the lies and misinformation, in particular how the BDS is hurting the peace process and how BDS is actually stopping reconciliation between the Israelis and the Palestinians?
Yes, well, I think it's important to relate to some of the misperceptions that are associated with BDS, because BDS has nothing to do with improving the lives of Palestinians, nothing to do with making the reality any better, because all of their activities, all of their finance and funding doesn't go anywhere towards the Palestinian people. It goes only to one place and one purpose, one aim: to delegitimize Israel and to boycott Israel. That's it. Nothing to do with the Palestinians on the ground. Nothing. The second misperception is that I think we should deal with, they have nothing to do with peace or dialogue or understanding or bringing people closer together. Because they have repeatedly said time and again, they're not supporting the two-state solution. This solution is against their agenda. Yeah. They don't believe in the two-state solution. They don't believe in dialogue, and they don't believe we should be talking to one another. You know, we had cooperation very carefully nourished between Israelis and Palestinians, between universities and academia people, and because of BDS pressure, that has ceased from the Palestinian side. How is that promoting anything? How is saying that Israeli artists not performing in any kind of cultural festival or academia event is promoting peace? Not allowing Matisiao, you know, a famous singer, to perform. How is that promoting the Palestinian cause? For me, it's very important that people should realize what the BDS is really about. I think it's very important.
They don't want to have normal, good relation between Israelis and Palestinians. And to add what I am telling about my own home country, to my shame, I must say, I'm ashamed about this, that they try to prevent Israeli scholars to show up and to deal and share their expertise with the public on scholarly topics. When you are so irrational, that is hatred. That is hatred.
Absolutely. Plus, what role can the European Parliament play in outlawing the BDS, as it poses a direct threat to Israel? It actually does nothing to improve the lives of ordinary Palestinians, and it actually makes the situation worse. If we look at SodaStream as an example, where this was an Israeli company that was working in Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland of Israel, employing Palestinian workers, giving them a salary 3 or 4 times more than what they'd earned under the Palestinian Authority. And because of pressure from the BDS and also the EU, they had to then move their factory into Tel Aviv, and those Palestinians who are working with Israel lost their job. Now, surely this is an initiative that actually brings Israelis and Palestinians together, brings about peace and reconciliation, and yet because of the BDS, it stopped. So what can the European Parliament do? What can you do to outlaw the BDS here?
Always, it is said here, in all the European institutions, the Council, the European Commission, the European Parliament, that they have nothing to do with BDS. So, what is my mission here? Then all these institutions should evade, quite clearly evade, any acts, any dealings with the Israeli government that has a semblance of BDS. And when you are so for strong relations between EU and Israel, be then aware that what you are doing is not applauded by the BDS movement or people that don't want any constructive approach to the difficulties that we are facing in the Middle East. And that is important for international trade. I've here seen how long it cost for years that we have a normal technical deal on trade. And at the same time, in a short time, there was an agricultural deal between the EU and the Palestinian territories. So, when you are saying, and I said it also to my Minister of Foreign Affairs, Koenders, about the labeling, big applause from the side of Hamas. I said to him, you are the friend of Hamas because of you should reflect on what you are doing. Is destructive instead of constructive. So, what we should do here, evade any acts, any invitations that has a semblance that we are bowing or taking, that we are bowing to the BDS movement, that we are that we show we are not boycotting Israel, totally not. We want to play a constructive role, so distance, far distance, and I know there are a lot of machinations here in the European institutions that silently plays in the hands of the BDS.
Yeah. And Thomas, I mean, there was a very important news story this week in the Times of Israel in which they reported that the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, which is an American think tank based in Washington, D.C., have evidence, and they presented evidence to Congress that many of the charities supporting the BDS have a direct link to Hamas. Now, doesn't this mean that our national European governments, including the European Union and the European Commission and the European Parliament, now have to take the BDS seriously, because it seems that the BDS now are supporting Hamas, and Hamas is prescribed by the EU as a terrorist organisation?
Absolutely, and as Bas was pointing out, I think that the EU needs to be serious about what they're saying. Well, first of all, I think we should recognize and give credit to the fact that Mogherini said it publicly. The EU does not support, will not support BDS. There is a momentum where even someone as hostile as the Swedish Foreign Minister, Margot Wallström, came out and said, well, we do not support BDS. Once they go out with these statements, which should make them accountable and say, well, if this is your line, let's see what we can do to break it down and see, look at the funding, look at legislation, and follow the lead of the British government, the Canadian government, what is happening in the US on different state level. And this is where we are really asking the European Parliament to say, listen, take the lead on this question. Why? Because if there's any continent in the world that knows that what precedes these type of acts, it's Europe. And with the German president of the European Parliament, I think we have a moral obligation to be very strong. But let me also say to his credit that we know that Martin Schulz is on the record even of being opposed to the labeling directive. Well, it may be that he said it after the directive was a fact, but nevertheless, he's on the record of saying that this doesn't help the Palestinians at all, it doesn't promote peace. So I think I'd like to be optimistic here and say we have a window of opportunity. We have a case which is morally very strong, but we need to put our feet to the ground and say, listen, let's look at the budget lines and let's look at these type of accusations. If they are true, we need to go through the different NGOs who are receiving funding from the EU and have a very clear line of not supporting anything which is in contradiction to the goals of the European Union. So let's seize this opportunity.
Yeah, and Sharon, can you provide probably more evidence to the fact that many of the charities that support the BDS are also supporting Hamas? Because this is essentially a game changer now, because it means that the BDS is actually directly involved in terrorism and directly supporting Hamas, which is a genocidal terrorist organisation based in Gaza that has on its covenant charter the destruction of Israel and the Jewish people worldwide.
Yes, I think definitely we should all look very, very closely at all these organizations, all these students, activists, and see where their money is going to, what is it supporting, and there's no doubt that there's some commonalities between the BDS movement and Hamas in the sense of their goal, which is to delegitimize Israel, fight against Israel. They don't see or they don't recognize the mere existence of Israel. Because, you know, if I should quote Marwan Barghouti, who is the father and founder of the BDS, he said, the problem is not the occupation of the West Bank. The problem is the existence of Israel. So this shows us exactly what we are facing against. And I think every person that is considering to support BDS, who is willing to donate money, should ask himself, am I donating money now to promote peace, understanding, a better future, or am I doing exactly the opposite? And this is something I hope everyone will keep in mind. Thank you.
And Bas, I want to bring you on board on this one. I mean, one way that we can counter the BDS is to actually buy Israeli produce and Israeli goods and to visit Israel. I mean, that's the most practical way that we can confront the BDS movement. But effectively, what can be done in terms of our viewers regarding this on a political level? Should they write to MEPs such as yourself and others to say, you know, this is something that we need to outlaw, and also to expose the EU guidelines, which is discrimination against Israel? Effectively, the EU is calling for economic sanctions against goods and services produced in Judea and Samaria, which is the biblical heartland of Israel, the Golan Heights, and also East Jerusalem.
I think when we really bear responsibility here as members of the European Parliament, especially the delegation for relations with Israel, I'm the vice chair, we should address this serious issue. We are the legal delegation of the Parliament for the relations with Israel, so we should put it on the agenda. We should work it out, and also in the member states. That is important. I will speak with my chair. Perhaps we will have a hearing, or we will have a conference on it to combat it. And also in the Netherlands, for my party, I am in line with what they are doing in the Netherlands, and also, and especially back these organizations of just people in the Netherlands, civilians, Christian for Israel, for example. They have a lot of Israeli products.
That's incredible.
And have your feet on the ground. When I go to a greengrocer, I'm asking, how is it with Israeli products? Do you get angry reactions? And he sells them, and he says, indeed, I get from time to time angry reactions, and then they can always come to me, then I will have a discussion with them. So back these people that are selling Israeli products, that they know, and that is, and also in the churches, for that is important. I spoke, that is, the main church in the Netherlands is also invaded by BDS elements. Not more in the Church of the Reformation, but we should aware for especially churches. You should think that they are backing because of the affiliation, religious affiliation with Israel. You see also an incursion of the BDS. And what is the BDS? They are always coming with nice arguments. Human rights, rights of women, free speech, and so on. But they are making a great abuse, a demonization, the contrary of human rights.
And Thomas, we're down to the last minute or so of the programme. So practically, what ways can our viewers get involved and counter the BDS?
Well, let me take this opportunity to present a letter to the President of the European Parliament, where we ask the European Parliament to take the lead to issue a resolution that would say that it's discriminatory to boycott another country under the World Trade Organization. and that includes Israel. And I'd like to take this opportunity and also to give this letter to Bastian Belder, who is the vice chair. And this is on the record. And I think that you know, if we can build on this momentum, and that's where we need the citizens, that's where we need your support to encourage your members of parliaments to sign this petition and to really build a momentum to make BDS something else, to make BDS buy and dialogue and support Israel. And I think we should look at it as an opportunity. We remember what happened in the 30s. Now we have a chance as good Europeans to do the opposite, to support the Jewish people. And this is a golden opportunity.
Excellent. Okay, so we come to the end of the program now. But
please send it to the chair of the Israel delegation. Then we have it on the agenda. For that is the issue.
I will.
And Sharon, I just want to say to you that you're not alone. You're amongst friends here. And, you know, Bas is a very strong advocate of Israel here in the European Parliament, and also Tomas does great work not only here in the European Parliament but also at UN level. And just to let you know that there are Christians that are passionate supporters of Israel, and they will confront the BDS and they will confront the lies and misinformation regarding Israel to stand with Israel.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all of our Christian supporters. We really, really appreciate it. You're in our hearts, really. Thank you.
So I just want to thank you all for watching today's European Report as we've discussed the dangers of the BDS. As we've mentioned in this programme, the BDS does nothing to support the peace process, nothing to support peace and reconciliation, but now they've decided to align themselves with a genocidal terrorist organisation, Hamas, so they definitely need to be outlawed. So it's important that you play your role in buying Israeli goods and confronting the lies and the propaganda, which is the BDS movement.